Hello, and welcome to the Wine Educate podcast. This is episode 82, and I am your host, Joanne Close. And we're trying something a little new, not just the audio, the visual today too. So if you are a podcast listener and you just love watching the videos on YouTube, well, I've done it. Here I am. It's episode 82, and I'm now on the YouTube on the video. We covered an overview of the Rhone last week with an emphasis on talking about the Mistral wind. Winds show up on your level 3 essay questions, and they are really important in shaping certain wine regions and the resulting wines that are produced. So important to go back and have a little listen to episode 81 if you haven't done so already. Also gives an overview of some of the broader wine laws in the Rhone itself. But we're focusing now on the Northern Rhone, and I went to go look at all the regions, and I thought, no, I'm going to need to break this up into two. So this is part one of the Northern Rhone, where we're going to cover Cote Rotie, Condrieu, and Chateau Grillet. So what is the Northern Rhone like? It is long and skinny. So it's about 20 miles from Lyon. So you could have a nice lunch in Lyon and then drive on over to Cote Rotie. How lovely. And then from north to south, it's about 45 miles in total. All the vineyards are up on the sides of the riverbanks, as it were. The Rhone River runs down through this area, and the vines are planted high up on the slopes. Vines were planted here long before they were started to be planted in the Southern Rhone. The Romans were here and really revered these steep slopes, and they would carve out terraces from the slopes and plant the grapes. When it comes to grapes from the Northern Rhone, pretty simple, especially when we're just talking about these three regions. Our only permitted red grape here is Syrah. This is the northernmost part where Syrah can ripen properly. This is a moderate continental climate. Syrah likes moderate to warm climates. So that is why it has to be planted on the best sites with this southeast facing exposure in order to ripen properly. You also get the benefit of the river itself, of the reflecting light heat back up into the vines from the Rhone River. So the styles of Syrah that are grown here, they are deeply colored wines, medium to high tannins, flavors of black fruit, pepper, and sometimes floral notes. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. Viognier is the signature white grape of the Rhone and produces full-bodied perfumed wines with aromas of blossom, apricot, and stone fruits. Have to be careful with Viognier. It is naturally low in acidity and high in alcohol. So you've got to be careful when you harvest it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Cote Rotie. The name Cote Rotie means the roasted slope, and this is in reference to just how much sunshine these slopes get and therefore generating heat. It was established in 1940 and now has about 330 hectares under vine. This region has a long history of growing grapes back to the Romans. However, much like most of the vineyards in Europe, got severely damaged during phylloxera and was slow to recover from phylloxera and was in the decline. It was much easier to grow apricots, much cheaper and easier to harvest than harvesting on these crazy steep slopes. So vines started to be planted less and less, and the region was really in danger of going extinct. It has to give a lot of credit to Gigal for coming into this region and promoting the wines and therefore making the region popular again, putting it back on the map. So in Cote Rotie, you can only make red wines. And from this, you're making these wines from Syrah. But they have an interesting rule where you can have up to 20% of Viognier in these blends. Now, this is not really practiced so much anymore, and certainly not as much as 20% is used. So if someone's doing this, they're probably using more like 5% in their blend. And it's all done together. So this is not something that's really common within the wine world. We don't co-ferment different grapes together. But here it's been part of their tradition. So they would grow the Viognier with the Syrah, harvest it at the same time, which can be tricky because they can ripen at different times, put them in the same tank to co-ferment them and essentially creating one wine from these two grapes. They don't just do this with any old white grape. Viognier has some special principles in it that allows it to act as a color fixer for Syrah. It actually helps to stabilize the color and also produces a little bit of aromatics for the wine. So moving just a little bit further south from Cote Rotie, we have Condrieu. And Condrieu is dedicated to only Viognier and makes only white wines. And much like Cote Rotie, it has a long history. Viognier has been grown in this area for a very long time. They believe it is the birthplace of this grape. In the 17th and 18th centuries, there was more of a fashion of making sweeter style. But today, about 95% of the wines made are dry wines and are not sweet. Just like Cote Rotie, this region was in danger of going extinct in the 60s and 70s and got down to only 10 hectares planted, which is wild to me. That's like a vineyard, right? That's nothing. But thankfully, people discovered it again and it began to be planted and came back into fashion. Today, they are 209 hectares of Viognier vines planted here in Condrieu. Now, here's an interesting one. So here we have Chateau Grillet. It is a monopole, meaning that it is owned by one person, a single owner. There's only 2 monopoles in France, and Chateau Grillet is one of them. It was owned by the same family for many, many generations, but was recently purchased in 2011 by the owner of Chateau Latour. Only 3.5 hectares, so really small. So what makes it special? There's this amphitheater that was carved out of the granite where the Viognier vines are planted, and it shields them from the cold north winds. A little bit of advantage there in helping with the ripening. So those are the 3, the very top of the Northern Rhone, and we'll focus on the Middle Rhone and the Southern Rhone next week. Please do sign up for the newsletter because I'm putting those quizzes in there. The newsletter is the best way for me to communicate with you about our upcoming classes, both online and in person. I hope that was helpful, and I look forward to talking to you about the rest of the Northern Rhone next week.